here in the New England area, it's back to school time. And it's always an interesting time of year for kids, parents, and a time of transition. So, what does that have to do with today's car video? Well, for some reason, it seems relevant. Uh, One reason it might be relevant is I want to talk about something that we mentioned last car video in regards to how we have a tendency to graft on imaginally problems to the problems we already have. I'll put a link above to that last car video, which was, again, we've explored it before, but we explored it last time as well. Just looking at that Coué quote, what Coué often said, that, for any issue or illness, there's the actual issue, and then there's the imaginal issue, which we graft on top of it, which we put on top of it. And this makes it so like we have a problem, but we make the problem twice as bad, 5 times as bad, 10, 20, 100 times as bad as it needs to be by imaginally playing into it in a negative manner. So something, if we're using, like a health example, something that perhaps would heal relatively quickly. Let's say that you hurt your hand, for instance. If you let it be and assume that it would heal quickly and mend itself, perhaps it would feel all better within a week or two. But instead, perhaps you worry about it and what's wrong with it, and if you should go to the doctor, and if the doctor's going to diagnose it correctly, and, is this the beginning of something worse happening to you? And instead of healing in a week or two, it takes a couple months to heal, or maybe doesn't heal completely ever. Now, this might sound outrageous or ridiculous, but this is what we have a tendency to do. And this is what Coué observed. Coué worked with many, 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 many people and saw that this was a commonality that basically everybody had. The body has a natural healing mechanism, but we often don't allow that healing mechanism to work as effectively as it can be because we imagine ourselves not healing. And this doesn't just go for bodily ailments. It also goes for the other major life issues that we face in our lives, such as our relationships with our loved ones, or our jobs, or our financial situation. Our level of comfort ideally should be improved by utilizing these imaginative concepts, these law of attraction, law of assumption, whatever you want to call it, concepts. But what Coué was pointing out is that we usually use them incorrectly. And this, unfortunately, is something that we're not aware of. And simply by becoming more aware of it and gently working on ourselves and gently working on assuming that we are getting better and better, you don't have to use that exact phrase, but having that as a general theme in your life and recognizing our tendency to think negatively, subtly, but constantly a lot of the time about things that bother us instead of letting them heal or mend or resolve themselves more naturally by going with the flow. By noticing that and assuming the best, more of the time our life improves. But it's not, for most of us, at least long term, Um, gonna always be as simple as, like, you imagine the fulfilled state, the fulfilled desire, and then you get it quickly. Because there's a lot more negative imagining going on, a lot more negative auto suggestions that you are playing into each day than you often realize, in all likelihood. I hope that's not the case for you, but this is just, a rather sober, objective observation I've made about myself and working with people, and the seeing the quote unquote manifestation community at large. People hear about these techniques that Neville talks about, or Abraham Hicks talks about, or Joseph Murphy talks about. They get very excited and they think, I'm just going to do the technique and it's going to fix everything. And that is the ideal, is that it will fix everything. But imaginal discontent, imaginal negativity, the negativity bias that most of us seem to have, which might be a cultural thing, might be a biological thing, might be a mixture of a bunch of different things. It's there. It's there, and it's there for almost everybody. And again, this is one of the real benefits of not just listening to one teacher, unless you really resonate with that teacher's message and what they're saying effectively works for you consistently. Because by listening to different teachers talking about these same themes, you get a different perspective, which is very helpful for how to deal with this negativity bias, this negative autosuggestion, which we inadvertently allow ourselves to play into far more than we would like. And again, I hope that's not you. But frankly, it probably is, because it's basically all of us. We play into negativity far more than we would like. And this is like, big boy, big girl talk. This is why people get coaching, frankly. This is like what I work with clients on, is like, why do you feel this pain even though you're seemingly doing everything right? Why do you still feel this discontent? And it's usually because of this subtle negativity bias, this subtle negative imagining going on, even though, most of my clients already are very well versed in these ideas, these LOA ideas, and are doing techniques to try to make them work effectively in their lives. They aren't working as effectively as they would like because of that subtle negativity bias that we all have to deal with in some way or another. And so, when they work with a coach like myself or other people who actually go deep with this stuff, and there's not, frankly, that many of us, they start to recognize, because they have a mirror in the form of a coach, oh yeah, I'm doing that. I'm doing this in this negative way that I've done since I was a kid or since I was a teenager. That thought process is still there. That's very cynical or pessimistic or doubtful. And that's slowing down me getting what I want. And that's clearly hampering my ability to feel better. And again, we talk about coaching in that way, or, applying these manifesting principles in that way, feeling better in that way. And it's like, well, that doesn't sound that different than counseling or therapy, or, doing some kind of, self work that is just mature. In my opinion, it's all the same. It's not esoteric and conceptual as much as it's like, all right, I'm working through what's bothering me and I'm doing my best to feel better. And I recognize that what's stopping me, what's hindering me, is me. And how can I acknowledge that openly to myself and at the same time not beat the shit out of myself. That's why people get help. That's why people go to these great teachers like Neville and Joseph Murphy and still read their stuff, or Coué, decades or if not 100 years later, because they're looking for advice on how to do that, as well as all these other great spiritual teachers and psychologists and philosophers, etc. So I think the back to school thing, I started the video with that, is because I noticed myself, my wife and I were talking, we're like, man, this is like the saddest time of year for a lot of us. Just comes up so natural to think about this sense of nostalgia and starting again, and perhaps not wanting to start again, and getting colder out. If you're here in New England, it gets colder. You have a nice summer, then it gets cold. It's so deeply embedded in there. I've been feeling that some the last week or so, and it's like, wow, that's deeply in there. And there's so many things in our life like that we're suggesting to ourselves, that are memories and beliefs and outlooks of how we live our life, that are from when we were very young, like when we transitioned from summer to fall to going back to school, for instance. So all this stuff is really interesting to me, and I know to a lot of you too. So I hope this was helpful. If you have questions or would like coaching, if you want to go deep, I can be reached at radicalcounselor.com.